Hey everybody, Lisa Romano here, the Breakthrough Life Coach, and today I want to do a video about why it's so important that we really pay attention to being careful about what we wish for. When you are on the healing path and you feel it in your soul, it's like been placed upon your heart that, and you don't know why, but you have to know your truth. You have to understand the big picture. You don't want to just understand today and get through tomorrow. You feel like there has been a calling placed upon your heart, and your desire is to truly understand, the universe, how you fit in it. Who am I? You're asking those types of questions. What will happen is our life will start to get rocky because what we're asking for is truth. And when you are asking for truth, you have to take some time and be sure that you are willing to accept and surrender to the consequences of discovering that truth. For instance, before I understood that there was something wrong with me, I felt invisible. I felt out of touch with myself. I dissociated. I felt like a shell. I was a human doing. I could not move fast enough. I could not clean fast enough. I could not wrap Christmas gifts fast enough. I could not do enough for other people. I kept trying to feel better, and the only way I knew how to feel better was in the doing of something. So as soon as my eyes opened in the morning, I was off and running. My mind was racing. Big part of my problem was rumination. I didn't know that was not normal. I didn't know that your mind is not supposed to run at 100 miles an hour. I didn't know that I could one day not have to think about anything, that I could actually train my mind to suspend a thought. What? I didn't know that. I didn't know that I didn't have to walk into a room and feel like my skin was crawling because I was worried about what everybody else was thinking about me. I didn't know that I didn't have to live a life feeling so afraid of being hurt by people. I was afraid of people. I was afraid of getting hurt. I shut down a lot. I tried to communicate, but there was always this level of fear. I didn't know that I was afraid to be vulnerable. I didn't know that I smiled instead of crying. I didn't know that I didn't feel like I had a right to cry. I didn't know that I did not know that I was not feeling. I didn't know that I was not in touch with what I was feeling. I did not know that instead of feeling, I was intellectualizing things. And so I felt off on the inside, but because my house and my ex-husband and our business, it was checking off these lists on a piece of paper like, you should feel good, you've got that, you should feel good. But I didn't feel good, right? The walls of my life were closing in on me, and I didn't see a way out. And my anxiety was getting worse, my panic was getting worse, depression was getting worse, and my health was failing. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know, and then I began to understand, I'm unconscious, that I am both unconscious and conscious at the same time. And I started to study the mind, and I started to study quantum mechanics, and I started to study psychology, and I began to understand that, oh my God, it's not me, it's my programming. And light bulbs began to go off. I began to create different ways of being, and things got different. My mind shift, I had mind shifts in my thinking, paradigm shifts. So once I figured out what the problem was, I started to implement certain things, and my life got better. But for a long time, I didn't know what was wrong. I wasn't able to have healthy relationships. I was sometimes pushing people away, or sometimes I was too needy. Sometimes I was, imagine me, too chatty. Yeah, I was like, blah, blah, blah. I was oversharing. Very oftentimes I felt like I had to tell people my sins and let people know that these were my flaws, and look at my flaws, right? I didn't even know I was doing that stuff, and I didn't even know that that was wrong, right? Well, a few years later, many years later, here I am. And so throughout my journey, throughout my life, I've always had a desire to know the truth. And when I was able to finally speak my truth, and the truth was that my marriage was not going to work, it wasn't, because you need two people to work in a marriage. And my ex-husband just wasn't willing to participate in the healing of that relationship. I realized things weren't going to change. And that was the truth. And so here I was, I wanted to know the truth. And what came along with that truth was the dissolving of this marriage. That was a consequence of the truth. And I think it's important that those of us who are on a similar path towards truth, we recognize that in our desire to manifest something in the future, that's a huge responsibility, because what will happen is there will be consequences to what you wish to manifest. So in my case, I had the desire for truth. I wanted my children to grow up in as healthy a home as possible, and they were being raised in a home that was not healthy. And so the consequence of that truth was finding the courage to go through a divorce. A divorce, if you haven't been through a divorce, you don't understand, or if you've been through a tough breakup, if you haven't been through a tough breakup for someone that you've spent your life with and you've had a home with, you have children with, it's literally like your skin is being peeled off. That's actually what it feels like. Or dissolving something, it's painful. And when you are desiring something more, what we have to learn to do on the healing path is to learn to somehow accept the consequences of that desire. Desiring is a huge responsibility, because when you desire, you're putting into motion this new paradigm or this new reality. And that means there will be a shifting out of an old reality, which means there will be a leaving of or an emerging from an older reality. Now, as you're shifting from one paradigm to a next, there can be loss, right? When you're leaving an old paradigm. And we have to accept that part of this new paradigm is going to require us to surrender to the consequences of the creating of this new reality. Whenever we are creating something new, very oftentimes there is an uncreation process as well. So if there is an abandoned building somewhere in the Bronx, and we buy the property and we want to build a new piece of property, before we can do that, we have to go through the process of possibly tearing that building down. And we have to go through whatever it is that we have to go through to get to that point. The building department, whatever it is, alert the neighbors, whatever it is involved with just demolishing this building before we can create this new reality, we have to go through. And so I think it's an important discussion to have with ourselves that anytime we want something new, or anytime we're desiring something, let's say you want to create a new career, and you have a career today, but you want to do a career change, you have to be willing to surrender to the consequences of this new manifestation. You might have to, let's say you're a partner in a business, you might have to go and explain to your partners why you're leaving this business. That might be very painful for you, but that's all part of this new reality. So when you have a desire, it's very important that you understand that in having this desire, it's going to require you to accept and surrender to the consequences of that desire. Now, this is a cause and effect universe. So what we do, has consequences. What we think has consequences. I think it's important that we broaden this concept and we understand that what I think has a consequence, right? When I am choosing fear, I'm putting fear into motion. When I'm choosing to surrender and I'm choosing abundance, I'm putting abundance into motion. When I choose lack, when I choose scarcity, when I catch myself coming from scarcity, there's an opportunity for me to shift and mold, like an alchemist, shifting and molding this thought until there's some release around this new idea that I'm trying to create or trying to draw into my reality. And so very oftentimes when I coach somebody who says, I want this, and we break down, well, what are the steps that you have to get there to achieve this? Very oftentimes that's where we'll find cognitive dissonance. That's where we'll find where someone's struggling with, oh, maybe I'm not going to accept the responsibility or the consequence of desiring that reality. Maybe I'm not ready to do that. And that's good information, because very oftentimes that cognitive dissonance is tied to a fear that I can't do it. Who am I going to hurt? How is my life going to change when I do begin to manifest this reality? So if you want, let's say you want peace in your life and you're in a toxic relationship, well, in order for you to get to this new reality, right, this new peaceful reality, you may have to dissolve the relationship that you're in, and with that, all of the ties that come with that relationship, which is very difficult. One of the most difficult parts about ending any relationship are the family bonds and the bonds of friendship, where you get your hair done, where you do your grocery shopping, where you like to go to the movies, where you work out. All of these things have become patterns and routines in your current relationship. And let's say you decide to end this relationship, there's a breakup, even though you can see this new desired reality in the future where things are going to be better, you may focus on the future reality. And then when these natural consequences of desiring this new reality show up, that's where we can get a little wobbly. That's why I think it's very important that on the path to manifesting a new reality, we take some time and we journal about what are the consequences of this new reality? And am I ready to accept the consequences of this new desire? And I think sometimes like just going in and mentally recognizing like, I'm gonna have to change hairdressers, or I'm gonna have to change banks, or my kids are gonna have to split the holidays and they're not gonna be with their dad. They might not wake up with their dad on Father's Day. I might not see them every Mother's Day. We might have to split the Christmas or the holidays, the holiday season. We might have to split visitation. My children might be angry for a while. My children might need therapy for a while. My mother's going to be angry at me, or I'm going to lose my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law and I were so close, and now that's going to affect our relationship. My money situation is going to change. I might have to get a second job. I'm going to have to move to a different town. So this video is not about discouraging anybody from creating a different future reality and manifesting that and wanting that. My goal is to help encourage you with life skills, because I'm a very practical life coach. I offer life skills. It's not blah, 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 life skills. How do I do that, Lisa? What are the technical things I need to do to get to that point? I have found in my own life and working with clients that identifying the cognitive dissonance and identifying the absolute areas of our life that are going to change as a result of us wanting to manifest this future reality helps us reduce fear. Now, when we're in fear, we're not thinking rationally. When we're in fear, we're on automatic pilot. And if our pattern is to retreat and fall back into old patterns, we have to be aware of that. Now, when we put our fears out in front of us and we look at them and we chew on them and we take them out all the way to the end and we surrender to them, then when we are in the position of wanting to create a new future reality and we are confronted with a bump in the road, because we have consciously and intellectually already approached this bump in the road, we're not triggered into fight or flight. And now when this situation shows up, now we're able to think with the prefrontal lobe, and we're able to use the ability to observe the way we think, which is called metacognition. And we're able to use the neocortex, the prefrontal lobe. We don't go into sensory deprivation because we're in fight or flight. We're actually taking in all this information. It's being processed very efficiently in a very healthy way. and we're able to see the end goal, and we know that this situation is situational, it's temporary, and it's all part of uncreating while we're in the process of creating. And so the answer is not to not dream. The answer is to dream, but to also recognize that dreaming and desiring is a huge responsibility, and that when you desire, you are putting into motion very absolute creative energy. And in terms of the 3D world, there is a process by which old matter has to become dissolved. And emotionally, because I believe that to heal, we have to look at ourselves on all levels, not just the psychological level and the spiritual level, but we have to look at the ethereal level. We have to look at the 3D level. Like, what's going to happen in the 3D world when I say that, or when I do that, or when I move here and I move that, or I make this switch? What's going to happen? And what life skills do I need to prepare myself mentally and cognitively so that I can take control over myself emotionally? And when you are taking control over your emotions through the cognitive level, you have a much greater control over your physiology. And when you're able to control your physiology, you're able to control your vibrational output. When you control your vibrational output, whether you realize it or not, it's like alchemy. You're controlling the outcome. So as we desire, we have to also pay attention to what's happening in the 3D world. We have to prepare ourselves in the cognitive world so that we can be prepared in the emotional world, and thus the physiological world, and thus the vibrational world. And when we can get all of these layers of ourselves in order, and we can get all of these layers of ourselves on the same page, then when the bumps in the road show up, we can focus on the goal, and we can understand that this is just a consequence of creating another future reality. It's a consequence of the truth. So becoming a master of your reality absolutely requires that we learn to surrender to and take responsibility for the consequences of our big dreams, and being focused on why we want that in the first place. So if you want something big, you want a big change in your life, one of the things that you can help yourself do and help yourself accomplish that thing is to focus on your why. Why do I want that thing? When I was going through my divorce, I knew why I wanted to get divorced. In fact, I didn't want to get divorced. I felt like I had to. I was dying. I was literally afraid that I was going to die. I had my sister-in-law, God rest her soul, was like 28 or 29 years old when she passed away. I was a few years older than her, and seeing that really, really struck me. And so the reality that people die, young moms die with children, this is a reality. And I didn't want to die. I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker in terms of my immune system. It was definitely declining. I had so many blocks in my system. I didn't know that it all went back to the way I was programmed to think and what I believed, and the physiology that was outputting as a result of the way that I believed. Had no clue. And so I knew that I had to end my relationship so that I wouldn't end up like that. That was my why. I knew that I didn't want to leave my children motherless. That was my why. I knew that I was programming my children just the way my mother had programmed me. That was my why. And so when the bumps in the road showed up, I knew why I had to move forward. I knew why I had to learn to accept the sadness and the grief and the nonsense that showed up while I was separated and while I was getting a divorce. So know your why, and also have a long, hard look at the consequences that are going to show up when you start manifesting your new desired reality. And if you can do that, you'll be able to move through the very normal stages of deconstruction, if that's a word. You'll be able to move through the stages of upheaval a lot more easily than someone like me when I was first going through it, where I was triggered and very reactive to the way I was feeling. So I hope that this life lesson has inspired you and has given you a few more things to think about, and it has allowed you to hold on to a life lesson that you can put into action in your own life. The power to heal is within you. You are absolutely a creator. This idea that you are not powerful is an illusion. It's an illusion of ego. Ego keeps us stuck. Ego is in fear. Ego doesn't want to die. Ego doesn't believe that there is a higher self. Ego doesn't believe that someone is going to catch us. Ego doesn't believe that it's safe to be vulnerable. But I can tell you that that is an illusion. And if you can learn to love yourself, remember, the greatest secret is that all the heart needs is love. And because we have been pushed away from love because of our childhood experiences, our heart has been void of love. And so the more we are able to fill our own hearts with love, even without other people loving us loving ourselves, the more magnificent and abundant our lives can become. So love yourselves, dear one. Love yourselves, honor yourselves, respect yourselves, and know that you are enough. I am bowing to the love and the light that is absolutely in you. Shine on, dear one, shine on. Namaste. Bye for now.